It started with a glow. Not the kind that comes from makeup or lighting or a good night's sleep. This was different. It was in her eyes, in the way her hips swayed just a little more than before, in how she smiled at nothing and everything all at once. Emma, my wife of 8 years, came home one Tuesday evening flushed, sweaty, and smiling in a way that felt foreign. She dropped her yoga mat in the hallway and beelined for the fridge, humming to herself as she poured almond milk into a glass. She drank it in one long, slow gulp. I watched from the kitchen doorway, half-eaten sandwich in hand, waiting for her to say something. "I feel amazing," she said, brushing hair off her neck. Yoga changed me. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe that was all it was. I tried to take her in, really take her in. Her body hadn't changed dramatically, but it was tighter somehow. Her posture straighter. Her presence louder in the best way. She practically radiated energy. I smiled, but something didn't sit right. "What kind of yoga is this?" I asked casually. She waved a hand. "Just regular vinyasa. You know, breathing, movement, flow." She smiled again, this time with lips still wet from the almond milk, and walked past me. Her tank top clung to her skin. I could smell her sweat, salty, rich, not unpleasant, almost arousing. That night, we had sex. Slow at first, then suddenly ravenous, like she was trying to feel something deeper. She bit my shoulder. She whispered things she hadn't said in years. She came twice, and when I pulled her close afterward, her body was hot and slick and trembling, but her mind wasn't with me. She didn't fall asleep in my arms. She went to the bathroom, stayed there for 20 minutes, and came back smelling faintly of sandalwood and something else. Something new. It became a routine. Yoga 3 times a week. Her return home was always the same. Glowing, giddy, high on something I couldn't quite name. She laughed at her phone more often, grinned at texts she never showed me. One night I asked, "What's so funny?" "Just a meme," she said quickly, locking her screen. I didn't press, but I watched, and I listened. Emma started doing little things she hadn't done since our early dating days. Wearing perfume to yoga, reapplying lip gloss in the car, checking herself in the mirror before leaving. She changed her hair, nothing drastic, but enough to make me wonder why. She started shaving more, painting her toenails, wearing lingerie to bed, even if we didn't have sex. "I just feel sexy lately," she said once with a wink. Yoga, I'm telling you. Yoga. That word became a damn spell. An excuse, a deflection, a shield. Every time I asked a question, she tossed it out like a magic charm. I wasn't stupid. I knew marriage changed people. I knew women went through phases. But something about this didn't feel like a phase. It felt like a transition, and I was on the wrong side of it. I asked her to do yoga at home one night, suggested we stretch together. She laughed, like it was cute. "Babe," she said, climbing onto my lap, straddling me, her voice syrupy. "You don't want to see me sweat like that. It's not cute. Try me." She kissed me, deep and slow, grinding her hips just enough to distract me. And it worked, but not forever. The next morning, I found her yoga mat in the back seat of her car, still rolled up tight, strap untouched. It hadn't moved. There was no sweat on it, no water bottle beside it, just the mat. Perfect, clean, like it hadn't been used in days. That was the first real crack, the first piece that didn't line up. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I started noticing the other things. She stopped inviting me to her yoga events. The little community she used to talk about, Marissa, Jen, that funny instructor with the man bun, all gone from her stories. She used to show me photos, play me music from the sessions. Now it was all vague. "Just me time," she'd say. "I need space to connect with myself." I could feel her slipping. One night, after her class, I heard her in the shower. She'd left her phone on the dresser. It lit up with a notification. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but I did. The message was from a name I didn't recognize, Caleb Y. It said, "Still feel me inside you?" My throat closed. I blinked, trying to convince myself I'd misread it, that it was some spam, a joke, anything but what it obviously was. I put the phone back exactly how I found it. I didn't eat dinner that night. She thought I was sick. The next day, she left for yoga with that same glow, the one that no longer made sense. That's when I knew something had changed, yes. But it wasn't just yoga. It was us. It was her. And something, or someone, had made her feel more alive than I had in months. Maybe years. I just didn't know how deep it ran yet. But I was going to find out. I didn't plan to spy on her. At least, that's what I tell myself when I think back on it. That Thursday was just supposed to be ordinary. Work, emails, meetings, then home. But all day, this itch under my skin wouldn't go away. I kept picturing her smiling at her phone, remembering that text from Caleb Y that I pretended I hadn't seen, hearing her laugh alone in the bathroom. By late afternoon, I couldn't focus. Around 5:30, I shut down my computer, grabbed my keys, and told myself I was doing something simple, harmless. I was going to surprise her. Maybe it would be sweet. Maybe she would be flattered. Maybe I would learn that I was just paranoid, and that the glow really was just yoga and oxygen and stretching and new friends. I parked a few spaces away from her car outside the studio. The sign on the building read Lotus and Breath Yoga Collective in soothing cherry blossom pink. The evening class started at 6. Emma's car was not in the lot yet. Perfect, I thought. I'd catch her coming in. Hug her. Bring her home. Maybe get that hungry smile from her again. I waited. At 6:05, a few cars trickled in. At 6:10, a couple. At 6:20, class began. The parking lot stopped moving. No Emma. My fingers drummed the steering wheel. I stared at the entrance, telling myself she was running late. Maybe traffic. Maybe she grabbed a smoothie with a friend before class. Except, she never mentioned friends anymore. Everything was suddenly private. At 6:35, I got out of the car. The receptionist was a cheerful girl with red-framed glasses and a messy bun. Her name tag read Lily. She smiled as I approached. Hey, need help signing up? Actually, I said, forcing calm into my voice. I'm here to surprise my wife. Emma. She's in the class right now. Her forehead wrinkled. Emma. Yeah, Emma Hayes. Another pause. She typed something into the computer, bit her lip. I'm sorry, she isn't on the roster anymore. I stared at her. My heartbeat slowed, then sped up so fast I thought I might black out. What do you mean? She hasn't been here in a few weeks. Lily turned the monitor slightly, pointing. We have digital check-ins. Last time she came was tap, 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 23 days ago. The air thinned. Something cold and metallic lodged in my stomach. Are you sure? Lily nodded, sympathetic now. I'm positive. We love Emma. She was here all the time. But she just stopped. I had no words. A laugh escaped my throat. Short, dry, empty. I thanked her, though I don't remember what I said, or how I got back to my car. My hands shook. My vision tunneled. She hadn't been here in weeks. Every night she came home glowing, sweaty, humming about yoga. She lied. I sat in the car, trying to breathe, trying to think. Where had she been? What had she been doing? And with whom? I told myself to calm down. Think logically. There had to be a simple explanation. Maybe she switched studios. Maybe she practiced somewhere else. Maybe she met a group outside. But none of those answers made sense with the secrecy. The smiles at her phone. The fresh perfume. The lingering heat in her skin. I closed my eyes. I replayed the day she first came home glowing. That wild energy in her body. I had wanted to believe it was just exercise. Just confidence. Just living. But it had felt like something else had touched her. Someone else. I started the engine, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. I could have gone home, waited for her, pretended everything was fine. But something, instinct, fear, pride, maybe all three tangled together, pushed me in a different direction. I stayed parked across the street until the class ended. Women drifted out laughing, stretching, pulling on sweaters. A man with a man bun. A couple with water bottles. No Emma. I didn't see her. Not anywhere. Yet she would come home later pretending she'd been here. Pretending she was stretching and breathing and finding her center. I stayed until the last light turned off inside the studio. Until the parking lot was empty. Until the sky deepened and the moon rose pale and disinterested above the street lamps. Then I drove home. Her car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. She stood in the kitchen in leggings, hair damp, face flushed. She looked freshly showered. Her mat leaned against the wall. Hey, she beamed. Yoga was great tonight. She was barefoot, relaxed, glowing. I swallowed hard. Good, I said. My voice didn't crack. I don't know how. She wrapped her arms around me, her body warm, her scent clean and floral and tired. She kissed me, her lips soft, familiar, loving. But behind that kiss, something hollow echoed, as if there was a space inside her now, one I hadn't been invited into. She pulled away first. You hungry? I made pasta. I nodded, unable to say more. She turned, humming, opening the cabinet for plates. The glow followed her. Radiant. Secretive. And all I could think was, if she wasn't at yoga, where the hell had she been? And with who? The next few days were a blur of pretending. Pretending to sleep, pretending to work, pretending to be a husband who wasn't cataloging every detail of his wife's movements. Emma floated through the house like a woman in love, except not with me. She hummed at breakfast. She smiled at her phone over coffee. She left lipstick rings on her glass of wine at night, then went upstairs to stretch before bed. Meanwhile, something inside me tightened, coil by coil. On Friday evening, she slipped into her black leggings, tied her hair into a loose ponytail, and grabbed her mat. The scent of sandalwood clung to her skin, warm, sweet, intimate. I'll be late, she said. Long class tonight. Okay, I replied, casually stirring sauce on the stove. Enjoy. The moment the door closed behind her, I turned off the burner, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't peel out of the driveway. I drove calmly, rationally, like a man doing something completely normal. I didn't even know what I was looking for exactly. I just knew I needed to see something with my own eyes. If she was at yoga, fine. Maybe I would feel ridiculous. Maybe she would catch me and laugh. Maybe we would make love after. But my gut told me otherwise. I parked down the street from the studio. Her car wasn't in the lot. Not in front. Not on the side. Not anywhere. I waited. At 6, I watched a few women enter the studio. At 6:30, a couple stragglers. But no Emma. The streetlights came on. The sky dimmed to navy. The class inside began stretching, their silhouettes moving behind frosty windows. Peaceful. Focused. Emma wasn't there. I checked my watch. 6:42. Then, headlights swept across the gravel, and there she was, her car pulling in fast, too fast, as if she was late for something. She didn't park in the front. She drove around the building. Behind it. Hidden. I followed, but slow, letting distance swallow me. I turned into the alley and killed my lights. Her car was tucked behind a dumpster, barely visible. The yoga studio's back door glowed from an external bulb. Emma got out. She looked around. Not for danger. For someone. And then a man stepped out from the shadows. Tall. Lean. Dark hair pulled back. The kind of body carved from slow hours of deliberate strength. He wore a simple t-shirt and joggers. Calm, waiting. Emma walked straight to him. No yoga mat in her hands. No hesitation. They didn't speak at first. They stood close. Too close. Then she slipped into the passenger seat of his car like she had done it 100 times. He got in beside her. The windows fogged lightly from body heat. I sat frozen. My hands flat against the steering wheel. My chest a hollow drum. My mind trying to deny what my eyes were screaming. But denial couldn't hold when I saw their silhouettes lean together. His hand cupped her jaw, tender, familiar. Her head tilted. Their mouths met. Slow. Hungry. Confident. A kiss that belonged to lovers. Not strangers. Not friends. Not yoga. My throat closed. The world narrowed to the shape of that kiss. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't take pictures or pound on the window or confront them. I didn't even breathe properly. Something inside me turned off, like a breaker switch. Numb. I watched her hand slide into his hair. Watched her shoulders tremble with a laugh I hadn't heard in months. Watched her glow, not from exercise, not from poses or meditation, but from him. Then he started the engine. I thought they would drive somewhere. They didn't move. They just sat there, talking, touching, kissing again. Slow, melting kisses. I didn't stay for more. I couldn't. I reversed, turned out of the alley, and drove away. Not fast. Not reckless. Just gone. The road blurred under my headlights. Cars passed. Houses flickered with warm windows, normal lives. The world kept moving while mine had split. By the time I reached our street, my body was cold, like my blood had given up circulating. I parked in our driveway and kept my hands on the wheel. 10 minutes passed. Maybe 20. When Emma came home, she was glowing again. She walked in barefoot, cheeks flushed, hair messy. How was yoga? I asked, my voice steady. She smiled, that bright, easy smile, and kissed my cheek. Perfect, she whispered. I feel amazing. I nodded. In the silence behind her words, I heard the engine cooling in a stranger's car. He was probably still parked behind the studio, maybe watching headlights fade, maybe thinking of her glow, I went to the sink and washed dishes we never ate. The warm water ran over my hands while something inside me sank deeper, settling like sediment. She moved around the kitchen humming. She took a sip of water, leaned against the counter, and stretched her arms above her head. Her shirt lifted, revealing her waist. Smooth. Inviting. It should have stirred desire. Instead it stirred dread. I stared at the plate in my hands and thought, I know where she is. I know who she's with. And she has no idea that I'm already breaking. For 2 days, I lived in a strange, suspended world. I went through routines. I showered, shaved, went to work. I nodded at coworkers, answered emails, laughed at things that weren't funny. Every motion felt like acting. The only time I was real was when I was alone. At night, Emma lay beside me, scrolling through her phone. Sometimes she giggled quietly, the screen lighting her face in blue. Sometimes she set her phone face down on the nightstand, as if it might betray her if it could see us. I didn't ask. Not yet. Instead, I watched. Everything was data now. Every smile, every late yoga class, every text alert she ignored when I was near. The glow hadn't gone away. If anything, it intensified. She was radiant, youthful, alive. She moved like a woman who had been kissed well. And that knowledge lived in me like a burning coal. On Sunday night, she walked into the living room wearing a soft white top and those leggings that fit her like a second skin. Her hair was damp from a shower, her skin rosy. Want tea? She asked, holding up the kettle. Sure, I replied. I watched her move through the kitchen. She hummed softly, tapping her fingers on the counter. Her phone buzzed once, then again. She didn't check it, not while I was looking. She kept stirring honey into her tea as if nothing had happened. I couldn't hold it anymore. Emma, I said. She turned, cup in hand. Yeah. I kept my voice calm, almost lazy. How was yoga? She froze for a fraction of a second, so small a pause most husbands might miss it. But I didn't miss anything anymore. I saw the flicker in her eyes, the tiny catch in her throat, before she smiled. It was great, she said brightly. Why? Her lie was warm, almost affectionate. I let silence stretch between us. Oh, I said, nodding. Just wondering. She smiled again, relieved, and handed me the cup. We sat together on the couch. She curled up against me, legs tucked under her, head on my shoulder. My hand rested on her thigh. For a moment, we could have been any ordinary couple. But beneath her skin, the truth pulsed like electricity. She smelled like sandalwood. Not sweat. Not yoga. Something else. Someone else. She took a slow sip of tea. You're quiet tonight, she murmured. Just tired, I said. Another lie. I didn't speak again until the cup was empty and she had begun absently running her fingers along my forearm, soft and familiar. That touch used to soothe me. Tonight it was a question. She looked up. You okay? I turned to her. How was yoga? I asked again. Softly. She blinked. I told you. It was good. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had stepped off a cliff and was still deciding whether to scream. Funny, I said. Because I went to the studio Thursday. Her body stiffened. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just stilled. A prey animal sensing a shadow overhead. You did, she whispered. Yeah, I said. To surprise you. She swallowed. That's sweet. They said you haven't been there in weeks. Now her eyes widened. She opened her mouth, but no words came. A war took place behind her expression. Panic, calculation, fear, denial, all in the span of a breath. Finally, she said, lightly, they must have made a mistake. No, I said. They were pretty certain. Silence. Thick. Absolute. She set her cup down carefully, as if it might break. Her hands trembled. She crossed her arms over her chest, then uncrossed them. She tried to speak twice before any sound came out. Why were you checking? She asked. Because I wanted to see you, I replied. I thought it would make you happy. Her lips parted. That's very sweet. But you should have told me. I would have waited. But you weren't there. Her jaw twitched. A tiny muscle, betraying everything. I switched studios, she said abruptly. I forgot to mention it. Which one? She blinked. What? Which studio? I asked, staring straight into her eyes. Her throat worked. She licked her lips. It's across town. What's it called? She hesitated. I didn't look away. She whispered, I don't remember. The lie was knife thin. I let it sit between us until it cut. Finally, I nodded. Okay. She frowned. Okay. Yes, I said. I believe you. That was the moment she should have relaxed, should have leaned in, kissed me, laughed it off. But she didn't. She stared at me. Suspicious now. Defensive. Why are you acting weird? She asked. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, because I saw you kissing him in a parking lot. Because I watched your glow get born in another man's car. Because I'm dying and you're humming. But I didn't. I just smiled. I'm fine, I said. Go to sleep, Em. She stood there, uncertain, caught between fight and flight. Then she nodded and walked upstairs. Her steps were quiet. Careful. I stayed on the couch listening to the sounds of her moving around our bedroom. Drawers opening. Closet sliding. The rustle of clothes. When she finally slipped into bed, she said, softly, I love you. I love you too, I replied. And my chest ached with the weight of it. Because the truth sat inside me like hot metal. Heavy. Burning. And I hadn't said a word. It was a rainy Thursday when Allison showed up. Emma's best friend since college. Sharp, observant, always a little too blunt for Emma's taste. They were opposites in most ways. Where Emma glowed softly, Allison lit up rooms with a hard, sarcastic edge. Where Emma kept secrets, Allison dissected everything out loud. She was the kind of woman who asked questions no one else dared, and I always liked her for that. Emma was already gone when she arrived, supposedly at yoga, of course. Allison walked in, shook off her umbrella, and gave me a look before even saying hello. You look like hell, she said flatly. Appreciate that, I muttered, stepping aside. She tossed her coat on the chair, kicked off her boots, and plopped down on the couch like she owned the place. Her hair was damp, clinging to her neck. She rubbed her hands together and nodded at the coffee table. Where's the wine? You didn't even ask if I wanted to drink. Don't have to, she said. You need it. I smirked despite myself and grabbed a bottle from the kitchen. As I poured 2 glasses, I felt her eyes on me, like she was scanning for bruises no one could see. I handed her a glass and sat down beside her. She took a sip, then stared at me over the rim. What happened? I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how to say it. There's no easy way to tell someone your marriage is unraveling thread by thread and you're watching, helpless, while your wife hums and glows and lies through her teeth. I just said, yoga happened. Her lips parted, just slightly. And for the first time in all the years I'd known her, Allison didn't speak right away. She stared at me, silent, still. Then she whispered, oh no. That reaction told me more than any words could. You know something? I said. She looked down, then set the wine glass on the table and folded her hands. Her fingernails tapped against each other. I don't know everything, she said, but I've had suspicions. I leaned back slowly. How long? Couple months, she admitted. I started noticing changes in her. Not just the glow, that was obvious, but the way she talked about yoga. Always vague, like she didn't want to say too much, or she was rehearsing answers. I nodded slowly. Did you ever ask her? I said. Allison hesitated. I did. What did she say? She told me to mind my business, she said bitterly. Said it was harmless. That it was the first thing in years that made her feel seen. Those words hit me like a slap. Seen. As if I'd been looking right at her and still missed it. As if she needed someone else to feel real. Allison sighed and leaned forward, elbows on knees. I hated how she said it, she muttered. Like you were just background noise. I wanted to shake her. Why didn't you tell me? She looked at me then, pain and guilt swimming in her eyes. Because I didn't want to be right. I swallowed hard. The wine burned going down. Not enough to numb it. Just enough to keep the ache company. She's cheating, I said flatly, staring at the floor. Allison nodded once, slow and heavy. I figured. I followed her, I added. This made her sit up. She parks behind the studio. Doesn't go in. Gets in some guy's car. Jesus. I watched them kiss. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked devastated, not shocked, not surprised, just gutted. He has long hair, I said quietly. Drives a black sedan. Athletic. The kind of guy who probably actually does yoga. Allison shook her head. God, Em. I confronted her. Asked about yoga. She lied to my face. I laughed bitterly. Told me she switched studios. Said she couldn't remember the name. She's spiraling, Allison said. No, I corrected. She's building a new life. The rain outside deepened, drumming softly against the windows. Thunder rolled far off, distant and uncaring. The kind of storm that doesn't cleanse, just soaks. Are you going to leave her? Allison asked after a long silence. I don't know, I said honestly. I feel like if I do, I'll break something that can't be fixed. But if I stay, you'll break yourself. Her words were quiet and true. Allison looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression changed. It softened. Not pity, not even sadness, just understanding. You don't deserve this, she said. I don't think she meant to hurt me. That doesn't matter. We sat in silence for a long time, listening to the rain. Eventually, she reached for her wine again and said, I can't believe she threw this away. All of it. You. This home. Everything. I stared at her, wondering how long she'd been carrying this. How many times she'd bitten her tongue. How many conversations she'd replayed in her head, unsure of what she was seeing. You're the only person who knows, I said quietly. Allison looked at me. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered just slightly. Then I'll be the one who helps you put the pieces back together. The next morning, I woke up feeling heavier than usual. Not tired, just weighted, emotionally dense. Emma had already left the house by the time I got downstairs. There was no note, no text, just the faint aroma of her perfume lingering in the hallway. For a second, I thought maybe she had slept beside me, kissed my cheek before she left, whispered goodbye while I pretended to be asleep. But I knew better. I walked into the kitchen and found a half-empty mug of coffee, still warm. The curve of her lipstick on the rim stared back at me like a signature I didn't recognize anymore. I sat at the counter for a while, unmoving, until my phone buzzed. Allison, you home? Mia? Allison, be there in 10. 10 minutes later, she walked in, still in jeans and a raincoat, hair in a messy braid. She didn't say anything right away, just gave me a long look and then held out a bag of pastries. I brought carbs, she said, because coffee and betrayal go better with sugar. That made me laugh. A small one, but real. We sat at the table, chewing in silence. She finally said, I thought about last night. A lot. Yeah? I feel like I need to tell you the rest of it. I looked up from my Danish. The rest. Allison nodded and took a long breath. I knew she was doing something. I didn't have proof, but I had a feeling, a bad one. It started a couple months ago. Emma would cancel our brunches at the last minute, or show up late, distracted, smiling at her phone like a teenager in love. And when I asked about it, she said she was working on herself. Allison rolled her eyes. But I've known your wife for over a decade. I know her tells. She always used to overshare, I said, remembering. Every little thing. Exactly. But now she was vague. Like she was crafting a version of herself to hand out. The Zen Emma. The yoga changed me Emma. It was bullshit. She was hiding something. I pushed my plate away. And you confronted her? Allison's eyes dropped. Yeah, she said. 3 weeks ago. I was sick of pretending. We met for drinks, and I told her straight up that I knew something was going on. That she was either falling for someone or already deep into it. I sat up straighter. What did she say? She got defensive. At first, she laughed it off. Said I was being dramatic. Then when I pressed, she snapped and said, It's harmless. It's mine. You wouldn't understand. Harmless. I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. She was angry I brought it up. Said I should support her. That she's just trying to feel something again. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She said you wouldn't get it. That you'd never really seen her. Allison frowned. It pissed me off. I told her she was being cruel. That whatever she was doing wasn't self-growth. It was betrayal. And then, she got quiet. Said, you don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own house. Those words sat between us, hard and cold. I swallowed. Invisible. She was emotional. I think part of her knew it was wrong, but another part of her enjoyed it. The attention, the secrecy, the thrill. She could have come to me, I muttered. If she was lonely, if she felt disconnected. I know, Allison said. But Emma, she doesn't talk when she's hurting. She hides, and then she acts out. I leaned back and rubbed my eyes. She said she didn't want to leave you. Allison continued. She wanted to explore her freedom without losing her foundation. Her words, not mine. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. So I'm the foundation, I said. And he's the playground. I told her she was being selfish, that she'd regret it. Allison paused, and I told her, if she didn't come clean, I might. That made me sit up straight. You said that. She told me to mind my own business, Allison said. That it wasn't my marriage, and that you'd never know unless someone told you. So you did. I didn't want to, but I couldn't watch her lie to you anymore. You didn't deserve that. I stared at her. For a long time. You're a better friend to me than she's been to either of us, I said. Her eyes shimmered, just a little. Thanks, she said. But it doesn't feel good. It shouldn't, I said. Because none of this is. Silence stretched between us, heavy and slow. Finally, she said. So what now? I don't know. Are you going to confront her for real? I nodded slowly. Soon. I just needed to hear it from someone else first. Allison reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. I've got your back, she said. No matter what. And somehow, in that moment, I believed her more than I believed anything Emma had said in weeks. It started with a text from Allison. You need a drink. Meet me at Rose. 8 p.m. That was it. No emojis. No preamble. Just direct like always. It was Friday, and Emma had already made plans. Late class, she'd said, pulling on a tight blue top that she absolutely didn't wear to sweat in. She'd kissed my cheek and vanished, leaving behind the same trace of perfume that had become her new identity. I stared at her car as it backed out of the driveway. Then I stared at my phone again. Rose. I typed back one word. Okay. The bar was dim and familiar, a neighborhood place with worn booths, soft rock playing overhead, and a bartender who'd been here longer than either of us had lived in town. Allison was already there, 2 drinks in, a beer in front of her, untouched, and a whiskey half finished. She looked up when I walked in. No hug, just that nod of recognition we'd always shared, a silent contract of, yeah, this sucks. You're late, she said, sliding the beer toward me. You're early, I countered, sitting beside her. I don't like sitting at home anymore. I understood that more than I could admit. We sat in silence for a bit, sipping. The first drink was a wall coming down. The second was the breath behind it. Any change? She asked eventually. I shook my head. Same lie. Same glow. Same stories about yoga. Allison rolled her eyes and knocked back the last of her whiskey. If I hear her say yoga changed me one more time, I swear to God. She used to tell you everything, I said, thinking aloud. She used to be someone I recognized, Allison replied. Now it's like she's replaced herself with a commercial for self-discovery and orgasms. That caught me off guard, and I snorted into my beer. She grinned. There he is, she said. What? The guy who used to smile. I shook my head, but I couldn't fight the curve in my mouth. She had this way of cutting straight through the fog. I feel stupid, I admitted. You're not. I feel small. You shouldn't. She tells him things, I said, staring into the foam. She opens herself for him. I know it. I can feel it. I see it when she walks through the door, like she's still glowing from it. And then she looks at me like I'm home base. Safety. She doesn't deserve to be safe, Allison said quietly. Not anymore. I looked at her. Her face was serious, but there was something else there too. A weight behind her eyes. A kind of rage she didn't know how to express fully. Maybe not just for me. Maybe for herself, too. She lied to me. I whispered. With such ease. She lied to both of us. We fell quiet again. The bar around us buzzed with low laughter, clinking glasses, the dull thud of someone trying to play darts. I used to think I was lucky, I said. Emma, she's beautiful. Sexy. Everyone saw it. And I thought, I'm the one she chose. She didn't just choose you, Allison said. You chose her back. You built a life. A home. You sacrificed. She didn't fall into your lap. You earned that love. I looked at her. Really looked. She was flushed from the whiskey, hair tucked behind one ear, eyes sharp even when they softened. I don't know when it happened, but I started to feel something. Not just gratitude. Not comfort. Something electric. And I could feel it from her, too. The way her leg brushed mine and didn't move. The way her breath caught when our eyes locked too long. Let's get out of here, she said suddenly, standing and grabbing her coat. You okay? I asked, surprised. She nodded quickly. Yeah, I don't want to sit here anymore. All right. I followed her to the lot. Rain had begun to fall, just a light mist that clung to our skin and glimmered in the streetlight. She stopped beside her car and leaned against the door. I didn't bring you here to talk about her all night, she said, almost shyly. No, I wanted to remind you that you're still here. Still wanted. Still seen. The words hit me harder than I expected. Deeper. She stepped closer. And suddenly, everything shifted. Her eyes weren't just friendly anymore. They were searching. Heated. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But we were close enough to. Breathing the same air. feeling the same tension rise like heat between our bodies. She reached out and touched my chest, not seductively, not aggressively, just touched me, like she wanted to remember I was solid, real. Her hand lingered. I could have leaned in. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her into a hug, tight, long, and desperate in the way only lonely people know. She melted into it. Neither of us said a word. When we finally pulled apart, she looked up at me with something raw in her eyes. "She doesn't get to be your whole story," she whispered. I nodded. "I'll see you soon," she added, unlocking her door. "I hope so," I said. She got in and drove off. I stood there, rain beating on my jacket, heart thudding in my chest like I'd done something I hadn't yet. But maybe, just maybe, I was finally remembering what it felt like to be wanted. It happened the next evening. I didn't plan it. I wasn't waiting for the perfect moment or rehearsing a monologue in the mirror. Something inside me just snapped, not with violence, not with rage, with clarity. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling aimlessly through the same 5 apps on my phone, when Emma walked in through the front door. Hair tousled from the wind, cheeks flushed, lips slightly swollen. The glow again. Her glow. It hit me all over again, the cruelty of it. That she came home after being in someone else's arms, someone else's bed maybe, and smiled at me like I was a safe harbor. Her routine was so practiced now. She set her yoga mat against the wall, kicked off her shoes, and called out, "Hey, babe." I didn't answer right away. She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch across from me, one leg tucked beneath her. She picked at her nails absently, then leaned her head to the side and smiled. "I missed you today." I looked at her, really looked at her. The softness in her expression. The way she curled her hair behind her ear like she always did when she wanted to appear sweet, innocent, unbothered. That was the moment I knew I couldn't do this anymore. "How was yoga?" I asked. She blinked, then smiled again, like we were back to the same script. "It was beautiful," she said. "We focused on hip opening poses. I feel so loose." God, she didn't even flinch. I nodded. Then I set my phone down and said it. "I know about the yoga guy." Everything stopped. Her body froze in place. Her smile didn't just fade, it shattered. The muscles in her face twitched, like she was trying to hold on to the performance, but couldn't find the lines. "What?" she breathed. "I've seen him," I said. "I've seen you." She stood up, suddenly defensive, arms crossed over her chest. "Are you spying on me now?" "No," I said calmly. "I was trying to surprise you one night. At the studio. Only you weren't there. You haven't been for weeks, have you?" She didn't answer. "And I saw you," I continued. "Behind the building. Getting into his car. Kissing him." "Jesus," she snapped. "You followed me." I laughed once. "That's what you're upset about." She stepped forward, eyes wide, burning now. "This is insane. You're obsessed. Paranoid. You're blowing this out of proportion." "Am I?" "You don't know anything." "I know enough," I said. "I know you lie. Every single time you walk through that door glowing and smiling like you found God between the mats. You're just coming back from him." Her jaw clenched. She didn't deny it. Not once. And that was the final nail. "I don't believe this," she muttered, pacing now, like a storm in tight circles. "You're acting like a child. Like a jealous little boy." "I'm acting like a man who's done pretending his wife still loves him." That stopped her. We stared at each other across the room. Years of shared history suspended in a single look. She blinked first. And then the gloves came off. "He understands me," she snapped, voice cracking. "Better than you ever did." There it was. No denial. No apology. Just that knife-sharp truth slicing through the room. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood up slowly, walked to the hallway, and pulled my overnight bag out from the closet. It wasn't packed. I hadn't prepared for this. But my body moved with certainty, like it had been ready long before my mind caught up. She followed me down the hall. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "Away." "To who?" I turned. And this time, I let the truth cut from me. "Allison knows," I said. "She knew before I did. She tried to talk you down. You told her to mind her business." Her mouth parted in shock. "You talked to her?" "She came to me. She's been the only honest person in my life these last few weeks." "Unbelievable," she hissed. "So now you two are bonding over me." "We're bonding over the wreckage you left behind." I zipped the bag, threw on a hoodie, and headed for the front door. She followed, barefoot on the hardwood. You're not even going to try to fix this? She said, voice rising. You're just going to run? I stopped at the door. My hand rested on the knob. I turned to her. I didn't run when you pulled away, I said. I didn't run when you stopped kissing me like you meant it. I didn't run when your phone lit up at 1 a.m. with messages you swore were just memes. She looked away, ashamed for the first time. I only started running, I added, when I realized you weren't ever coming back. Silence. Thunder cracked outside, distant and slow. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I stepped outside, and I didn't look back. The night was still warm when I pulled up to Allison's house, but the wind had turned sharp. That early fall kind of wind that rustles the leaves in a way that makes you feel like something's changing, even if you're not ready for it. Her porch light was already on. I hadn't told her I was coming. I hadn't even texted, but somehow she knew. By the time I stepped out of the car, bag slung over my shoulder and heart somewhere between my stomach and throat, the front door opened. Allison stood in the doorway barefoot, wearing an oversized sweatshirt and leggings, hair down, no makeup, just her, unfiltered, present. You look like hell, she said softly, the same thing she'd told me days ago. You said that last time. You looked like hell then, too. I exhaled something like a laugh. She stepped aside. I walked in without hesitation. Her house smelled like sandalwood and laundry. Lived in, but clean. The kind of place where warmth lived in the corners, not because of candles or blankets, but because someone cared about it. She shut the door behind me and locked it. We didn't speak right away. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just turned and looked me in the eyes, and I saw it written all over her face. She knew this moment was coming. I'll sleep in the guest room, I said. She nodded once. I know. I followed her down the hall, passing the familiar pictures she always meant to replace but never got around to. She opened the door to the spare room and flicked on the light. The bed was already made. Clean sheets. Soft lighting. A folded towel on the chair. You didn't, I paused. Did you prepare this? She didn't look at me right away. After our night at the bar, she said quietly. I knew it was close. I set my bag down slowly. She didn't deny it, Allie. Allison flinched slightly at the nickname. I hadn't called her that since college. She said he understands her better than I ever did. That silence again. The one that said everything words couldn't. Allison walked over, took the folded towel off the chair, and placed it on the bed. Her movements were slow, careful, measured, like she was doing something sacred. She's wrong, she finally said. But you know that. I nodded, eyes on the floor. She looked at me for a moment longer, then stepped forward and, without asking, wrapped her arms around me. It wasn't a passionate hug. It wasn't revenge. It was human, and I clung to it. My face pressed into her shoulder, and I let my body lean into hers, the way you lean into someone who knows exactly how far you've fallen. She didn't say it's going to be okay, because it wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. But she said it with her silence, with her warmth, with the way her hand moved slowly across my back. When she finally pulled away, her voice was barely above a whisper. You're safe here. God, I hadn't felt that in months. I looked at her, at the way her eyes held mine without looking through me, without measuring what she could get, what she could take. There was no agenda in Allison's gaze, just presence. You didn't have to do this, I said. I know. You didn't even like being around us the last few months. I didn't like watching you disappear. That hit harder than anything Emma had said in years. She turned toward the door, pausing in the frame. There's beer in the fridge. And leftover Thai if you're hungry. Thanks. She gave me a small smile. Not forced, not practiced. Real. I'm down the hall, she added. If you need anything. And with that, she left. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the closed door. The silence of the house was different than home. It wasn't laced with lies or tension. It didn't creak with distance. It was just quiet, like being underwater, right before you swim to the surface. I lay back slowly, shoes still on. The pillow smelled like lavender, like peace. I didn't sleep right away. My mind kept circling around Emma's words, around the months I tried to pretend I didn't know, around the image of her stepping into another man's car like she was stepping into her real life. But then my thoughts drifted to Allison, to the way she opened the door before I even knocked, to the way she hugged me like I wasn't broken, to the quiet between us that didn't demand explanation. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be chosen. I felt like I had already been seen. It didn't happen the next day, or the one after. In fact, for almost a week, we danced around it. That quiet, heavy tension that lived in the air between us. We shared space, meals, conversations, but not touches. Not kisses. Not sex. There were moments, though, small flickers, where something unsaid almost rose to the surface. Like when I made her laugh over dinner, and she reached across the table and squeezed my hand for a second too long. Or when I caught her watching me from the hallway one morning, coffee in hand, her gaze soft and open. Or the night we watched a movie and I fell asleep on the couch, and when I woke up, she'd tucked a blanket over me, the pillow under my head smelling like her shampoo. They were nothing. And everything. We didn't talk about Emma. Allison didn't bring her up, and I didn't volunteer. I knew Emma had texted a few times. Once even called. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The sound of her name on my screen made something cold bloom in my chest. I'd spent so long being her safe option that I no longer knew who I was without her shadows cast over me. But each day with Allison, I started to remember. It was Thursday night, exactly 1 week since I'd left, when it finally happened. We'd had tacos. Homemade. Allison had burned the shells, and I'd given her hell about it. She laughed, threw a kitchen towel at me, and poured another glass of wine. We sat out on her back porch afterward, wrapped in light jackets, a candle burning low on the table between us. Crickets chirped in the tall grass beyond the fence. A breeze moved through the trees like a whisper neither of us dared translate. "You seem lighter," she said, sipping slowly. "I feel lighter," I admitted. She tilted her head. "Even with everything? Especially because of everything," I replied. "I think the hardest part was pretending not to know. That's over now." "It is," I said. "And I'm here. With you." She looked at me for a long moment, then turned her eyes to the stars. "You're not just hiding out, right?" "No. Because I can take it," she added, voice low. "If this is just a place to land." "Allison," I said, but I didn't know how to finish. "I just need to know what's real." So I stood up and walked over to her chair, knelt down beside her, and took her hand. "This," I said, "this is real." Her eyes searched mine. And then, with the quiet confidence only she had, she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't rushed or needy. It was slow. Sure. Warm. Her lips moved against mine like they already knew the shape of this moment. Like they'd been waiting. My hand slid along her jaw. Hers tangled in my hair. When we finally broke apart, her breath was shaky. So was mine. She touched her forehead to mine. "We shouldn't. I know. But I want to. I do too." The next kiss was different. Hungrier. Her body leaned into mine, chest to chest, knees brushing. We rose together without words, fingers interlocked as we made our way inside. She led me to her bedroom. No performance. No games. Just truth in the way her shirt peeled from her shoulders and mine followed. In the way her hands trembled as they touched my chest, and how mine rested reverently on the curve of her hips. We didn't rush it. We just let it happen. The way healing does, slowly, with skin and breath and the kind of intimacy that doesn't need to shout. It wasn't sex out of vengeance or pain. It was something else. When she pulled me down to her, when our bodies met and her name broke from my lips like a prayer, I didn't feel like I was betraying anything. I felt like I was coming home. We moved in sync, our rhythm guided by something deeper than lust. She arched under me, fingers splayed across my back, eyes locked to mine the entire time. No walls. No pretense. Just us. And when it was over, when we lay tangled in sheets and silence, breath steadying, hearts still galloping, she turned to me and whispered, "Still real?" I nodded. "More than anything has been in a long time." She smiled. And for the first time in months, I did too. It was supposed to be a quiet morning. Coffee. Silence. The sun leaking in through Allison's kitchen window, warming the hardwood floors. She was barefoot in one of my old t-shirts, humming something soft as she stirred cream into her cup. I hadn't felt peace like that in so long. That simple domestic rhythm that doesn't demand anything but presence. And then came the knock. Not polite. Not patient. The kind of knock that carries heat. Allison looked at me. "Do you think?" I already knew. The second I opened the door, I was met with the storm. Emma. Her face flushed, eyes wild, hair pulled up into a messy knot like she'd left in a rage or hadn't slept. She stormed past me without waiting for an invitation. "What the hell is going on?" she snapped. "Allison," I said softly over my shoulder. You might want to stay back. No, Emma barked. She should be here. She wants to be part of this. Let her. Allison stepped into the room slowly. Calm, quiet. She set her coffee on the counter. I didn't know you were coming, she said evenly. Emma's eyes darted between us. Of course not. Why would you? You've clearly been busy comforting my husband. Ex-husband, I corrected, voice steady. Or it will be soon. Emma turned to me, furious. You're seriously doing this? Running to her? I folded my arms. I left because of you. Because you cheated. Lied. Disrespected everything we built. Don't pretend like this is about Allison. I made a mistake, she snapped. But this is cruel. I was confused. I was trying to figure myself out, and you. You weren't confused when you climbed into his car, I said sharply. Emma froze. You weren't confused when you came home glowing, kissed me on the cheek, and told me yoga had changed you. That man, she started, has a name. I interrupted. Or should we call him the hip opener like you used to joke about? Emma went silent, breathing hard, arms trembling. Allison didn't flinch. She crossed her arms. You don't get to be the victim, Emma. Oh, please, Emma spat. Like you're innocent? You were waiting for him to fall apart so you could swoop in. I warned you, Allison snapped. I told you what you were doing was wrong. I told you to stop. You didn't care. You didn't know what it was like being in that marriage. You're right, Allison said. I only saw the man who loved you. The man who tried every day to be enough. Silence. Thick and hot. Emma's voice cracked when she said, You're throwing it all away for her? I looked at her. Really looked. The woman I once would have done anything for. The woman who had become a stranger in her own skin. She was shaking, not from rage anymore, but from disbelief. Loss. I didn't throw it away, I said. You did. Right then, the front door opened. Not mine, hers. And in walked the yoga instructor. Black shirt. Man bun. Smug confidence curving his mouth until he saw the room and stopped dead in his tracks. Emma, he said, confused. Emma's face turned ghost white. Allison's eyes widened. The silence was a physical thing, sharp-edged and brutal. What are you doing here? Emma asked, voice thin. He looked around, obviously sensing the disaster. You told me to meet you. After your conversation. You said it was just your friend here. Get out, Emma whispered. He looked at me, then at Allison, then back at Emma. You didn't say he'd be here. I stepped forward. We're done. This little fantasy, the secret meetings, the lies, the glow, it's over. Emma looked like she might collapse. I want you back, she blurted suddenly. All of this, it's a mistake. You were right. I lost sight of what mattered. My jaw clenched. You said he understood you better than I ever did. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, Allison said from behind me. Emma looked at her, fire back in her eyes. You think this is going to last? You think you're different? No, Allison replied calmly. I think I'm honest. That's already better than what you offered. The yoga instructor opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. There was nothing he could add that wouldn't sound like a child interrupting grown-ups in the middle of something important. I looked at Emma one last time. No more lies, I said. No more half-truths, or late-night drives, or lipstick I don't recognize. I've already moved on. I walked over to Allison and took her hand. Emma blinked, stunned. The yoga guy turned like he might say something, but again, thought better of it. Without another word, I walked out with Allison beside me. We stepped into the morning light together, hand in hand, our fingers intertwined like we'd been doing it for years. She didn't speak until we got to the car. You okay? She asked. I looked back once, just once, and saw Emma standing on the porch, arms folded, lips trembling. The instructor hovered behind her, unsure if he should stay. I'm okay, I said. And I meant it. We got in the car, and as we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of the yoga studio in the rearview mirror. Emma stood outside it now, alone. She thought yoga would save her life, but it just replaced her in mine.